Hello, I do it in English because I need help from the United States, not as a political entity, but from the United States and the few, who are pillars of righteousness. And this can be private. Today we have the 21st December 24, and this as a little proof, because it is detective investigation on the private level as well. This is my mother. She said, and this is not for the tears, although tears could come in between. I was raised, and this is private, but others helped. And those were somehow going to a knot in the network that was in the free country that had it and still has it as the first goal. And I start this because the surrounding is tweaked. It is not my fingernail that needs to be glued. That is nothing in comparison. This is the radio, and I should have some radio station on the middle length wave or the short length. I only have the so-called UKW. This is known for me and maybe for others as well. You can have it directly from the from the radio transmitter, from the station, but there is a technique where you can get it from neighboring technical equipments. And now I come to the point to think about the possibility that illegal something, the information is not coming through unfiltered. This is detective thinking, and I have not to blow it out of proportion. It could well be out of proportion without me even knowing it. And I now have to stop it because this video is somehow hindered by my computer, and this computer could be remotely disturbed. I had to build in a second transformation unit from high currency to low voltage, 12 volt, 5 or 3. And there was, years ago, a warning from the private people who were here that there could be in the neighborhood people being privately somehow against us and technically radio technicians. But this is then, of course, a theory. I now come to the point, it could be practical, and this would be against what you call the basis of law or contract law. But this is only on the sideline. It could well be that the radio is switched off. Therefore, I cannot file a complaint to the police. My mother did so. This is my mother, the younger. This Papa. This is the role model. I was raised with no humans who be the absolute role models. It is the belief that kept my parents kept them. I must be careful, or I have to be careful. I was not raised not knowing to be born in the United States. It was talk about it, and then talk against it, and then unknown. This is World War II that was there in the 70s, and it was worked on it with a thinking of truthfulness. And I'm doing this without any preparation. What the content is concerned, I do it with the preparation to think about and to take that what is around, and I have to raise the alarm privately. You cannot go, if you have a radio issue, to the so-called German police. You could have done so with my father. This is not my legal papa. He asked me once, and I said, you are the only father I know, because I was a child and I did not know about the legal grounds. And as a child, that means I have remembrance to the year I was carried around, and it was said, you have a mother. She was sick, and there could be a second, but how that possible? Or the first is the second. And this later was not somehow put apart. I sat beside Mama, beside old Ma, and I said, I cannot lose one of you. I was asked at the age of 14, and then there was a trick, and I said, what can we do to my mother, the elder? The mother, the younger, she was pressured, and it was said from Hessen. And explanations to me were not given. Those are on my ceiling. I built it myself because there was this the best possibility. It is what you have, and then you build something out of it. Then you do it yourself, not to spend too much money. These are role models, and it was not known to me that there was big problems with those groups. The unbelievers, that were the Hitlerists. I was raised differently to the others. And the others, of course, were not pleased. Those were in a studio. It was set in Breslau, and I heard it before I found the photographs from 2020, but it could be 2019. It could also be that I was said there are photographs. But the problem is not for me. This is merely when it started, but it could have been a year before. I was looking for something else. And then, of course, as a detective, I know this could be the same paper on the wall. It was a studio where you could send postcards to families without having been in a snowy environment, without having been at the beach. And this first must have been in the years before 45. Why was I that much interested, and why have I now concluded this could be? It was said before, but then it was contradicted. And then it was said, this is not important. But I was there and I filed it. I put it in the papers. Or I couldn't do, of course, I was with an official. And then it was said, no one is interested. 1986 it could have been, or a little bit later, but it was contradicted. This is not possible. But then someone said, huh, it would do them something too much work, or else what is an individual? I did not know that it is important. Now I come to the conclusion. And it is detective work, and I know I have the righteous on my side. Those are believers in righteousness. Of course, I know that the living God is the source. And why do I say, of course? I nearly met no one who was not a believer. Not in Russia, not in China, but those beliefs I was not able to judge if it was the same. But you believe in a thing you do not see. If you have a man or a woman, you have to be someone who is sensible. And those somehow had been. And it was something that was strainful for the children being raised. Those had something like a church, the stork, the bird, that was the name. It was not a church that was to be identified by the name. And there had been 2 congregations, and there had been work for the own children to raise them up in a good German scientific, and this is medicine, this is nearly everything. Pedagogical, psychological is not a thing that is new. It is the software, the BIOS, the basics, ins and outs of life. And the ground had been similar to my father's. He was a Protestant, but first, before he must have been Catholic, and before he was most likely agnostic. Some so-called relatives had been even Muslim, and this was with respect. It was not to be judged by their belief, but because by their character. And that is very much important. I need help by those who understand that there could be something against me. That was, or that still is, a thing you would put in the Cold War. This is today as a proof, kind of proof. This is here, my country is not my country. It is the so-called country. And it is a problem others had gone through as well. Those from the East were looking for a new home. And I met people in the United States. And I met people who wanted to build up role models. I learned English after school because on the voyage there was much talk, maybe 90% in German. And what is with this George? He was one of the men who had worked to solve the problem that was there. Later, it was called the Civil War, maybe it was even at that time, and he was someone who was not known. Later it was a digging in. People looked closer and found things, and I was asked, and I worked on it because I wanted him as a role model. There was suspicion he could be one of my grandfather's men. Later, I looked into it. After this was looked into by officials, I was only a helper, and people said this could be Carl, but it was with a hush-hush. Why was it? He is not a relative of my mother. He is not. My mother said people feared him. People had fear because he was military. Then others said, no, he had converted. And I was looking closer, and I couldn't look close. I had to wait till I met people. I was a child. And as a child, you are looking for the truth. First, the character, if it is possible, you cannot ask him to sit down, that you have an interrogation. You are detecting, and there were artists that had, before all these wars, the wars with the most destructions are called World War I and II, but it was in between. The military, because of the reasons you know maybe better than me, but I was private there and I had artists. Those were looking for new things. And it was, for example, Asterix and Obelix. Do you know them? Maybe not, maybe. Lucky Luke, is that a name you remember something? And this was done because people were looking for something that was a good network before. And I cannot explain why they found my mother and me, but it could well be my papa. And this was not communicated to me. This is Papa's face, but he said they put my face, and he needed money, and he was there in an audition. And then it was used not according to what he wanted. I learned on the sideline, or something not in the focus, but I overheard it, so to speak, that you have to be careful. This is of course something that should be much larger. My father, this is a real passport. Oh no, that is not important. This I found again. In between it was said this lady could have been there as you were born, as you were being born. I had to, as a detective, understand the elders, or the more in the age of elders, were not willing or were not allowed to explain more. She was coming from South Africa. Could it be that her husband was there as an ambassador or working with an ambassador? Therefore, I concluded I could have been born in South Africa. Then there was an asking to pay something for a helicopter flight that had to do with my birth. I did not know if it was because my mother had to be having surgery that she could bear a child. She was not having a child before. This was not that important. It was only to understand, because it was involving my closest. What was with Papa? Papa was wanting to preach. Papa said I would preach about the Savior. He was being drawn to the army in 1945 or 44. Then he was having imprisonment on a field, and there he got in contact with a calendar, so-called tracts, and this was the Neunkirchener. Later he was in the Ruhrgebiet, and he heard about the evangelist Billy Graham, and he was and others as well very pleased that this would bring peace and stableness to their own life and to others also, but I myself was to be raised critical. This was in my both mothers. This is my mother. She should be much larger if it is according to what is important, but my mother, the younger, she came close. This is her best liking. And she said then, when she was gaining weight, this they do to me. What does it mean? Was it not good doctor caring, not a good doctor caring for her? The whole family was very much at the doctor's office, not to have surgery, but to look for a more healthy lifestyle. Therefore, my whole life had been Lucky Luke, being like a detective, and there were old leaderships and old technicians. This is a helmet. I got in trouble wanting to do it for my private, looking into my own ancestry, and I had then bought a stick as well. And this is from Amazon, a walking stick. And for example, those two were the reason, and then I'll put this away. This is only to show that I'm trying out to get information and I'm coming to the conclusion something's not as it ought to be. And it is the same with the walking stick and the helmet. Those two are of course allowed according to the law, but why do people raise alarm seeing me to wear it and to go around the corner? I think it is all peaceful. It is not a changing in the law. Maybe it will be, but then there is no freedom at all anymore if you're not allowed to wear a helmet and a walking stick. And is this the freedom I want? No, it isn't. But because my mother was somehow, he was expected back from the war. It was not according to reason, a little bit possibility there had been, that he could come back. And then I learned there are others who were co-workers, but this could be private because you had to protect yourself being in a resistance. What is resistance? It is something that comes out of it without wanting it. This is my kind of resistance. I do not want to be someone resisting as a goal. I want to do it, most likely not too much of it. It is something that is there if you go the narrow path, and this is something, this is not evangelism, this is reason, this is not psychological, it is ethical. Because the leaders of my mother had been international. She went back with her explanation and she was even more careful than me. When she wanted to tell me about the Kaiserdienst, she said there could be in German Vorbehalt, there could be forbidding, still forbidding, and she was asking and she was allowed to tell me the outer circumstances. Therefore understand, there had been always a network. This was banking. There could be Carl with his bankers. He was in the contract business to interweave companies, the so-called supply of chain from mining to the supermarket. And this is not a thing that gave him much much special time with his family. When he was coming home, there was the joke, Mary had a little lamb. Carl was coming home, and there was, I don't know why, was she Mary, Maria as well? Paulina? She was having Fritz, my father, Fritz Johann. And because he is very old, this is not for this. And why is Custer? Why had he been of interest? I wanted him as a role model as well, even if it is not known. This now comes in addition to it. And then people were after something with John Shiloh. I'm now writing it down. This is something I was in the inventing. This is not for the, this is no advertising. This is a brand that has the name on it. The interior is made out of supplies, and this is not new. It is like with the computer. I, as a child, was there, and people are going into grammatic. They're going into it and have complaints. This is different. I do not want to make errors. This is when I'm in a joking mode. I'm rightly not. And that there's the CPU. Then there was the invention. It was a house, and even it went into the garden. There was an inventor, and he was not allowed to talk about it. That thing, and I'm not talking about it. This is only that I have to prove that I'm myself, and this is strange. People never think about the possibility that in a free country there could be hindrance to talk about the so-called BRESLAU-FRIENDS. People think about the normal behavior, what you maybe call normal, but your measurement maybe is different. In the United States, I had contact with people, but I did not even know it was in the United States. It was because I was sleeping on the voyage, and then waking up and having families. You do not perceive even where the nearest town is. And this was a thing that was done for a mother because your father can't do it. It was the business of bank, of chain of supply workers. Chain of supply workers it was. And then, of course, there are the inventors. And because my parents are that old, Emilia Earhart was someone whom my mother had not for a long time. She was mostly living then in the United States. She had some contact, because she was, in the former days, it was not said to me how and what. It is for your own good not to know too much. Are those secrets? Yes and no. It is no secret there is a network of banks. Yeah, it is no secret chain of supply have to be coordinated. They had been asking, like asking Mata. Mata is a wise woman, a wise woman. And Mata is like in India or where is the eastern part of the world. This is something on the sideline, this action camp. And for me it was like being, not showing, but doing it like fun as a child. But this does not mean that my mother had no plans. The old networks, of course, were not on the moon. No. The old networks were distributed among the so-called leading nations. And if you look at it, the East, from this part, the East, is of course there. Where are those scientists my mother talked about? India could have been Kazakhstan, could be no, China as well, an old center where the wise men came from. And it is very strange that I now come to the conclusion what I had as a rising up, this was something others were looking at a possibility because I'm weak in the outward standing. There is no protection except the normal police. And this is, of course, dangerous. There had never been a known protection except the ordinary traffic police. There had been known protection on the voyages. Of course, Japan is known. Japan, here was the atomic bomb. When was it? And my mother said, maybe from your father's line, he was called, of course, grandfather, you have to do some protection. But it was not said if it is, and not communicated. And why was this cautiousness? This is for the people who understand there had been always some international networks, and this inventors, and then it went, of course it is from of old, in the East, Alexander the Great and Genghis Khan, the very old ones, but there had been then Yugoslavia and Greece and Turkey, of course, the Osmanian Empire. I count them among the East, but it could as well be something else. It is not said that there's only one party or two parties, even three. And then South Africa, Africa, South America, there's the U.S., there's China, there's Russia, there's India, and do not forget the others. What is with Saudi Arabia? What is with Sudan, Egypt, Libya, Algeria? This is mostly French influential territory, or isn't it? And this was only like historical telling. But looking at the networks, those are not military networks. I had a little bit contract through the people who traveled across everything. And the military, of course, have with the inventors and with the industry some special interests. Why I'm telling this? I'm now seeing problems. If people think I was a helper with politics, and I was always raised up with the not only the idea, this is not a special thing to do, it is basing under everything. To think about the law, no, first ethic. Then is the law, this is a sign for law. I'm not a friend of the Nazis and the SS, this is the law, okay? But being in the state and then having somehow, not somehow, but it was not communicated, military pass with the good people who were protecting the countryside. And as you know, protection was somehow, even in former days, understood as attack. I'm not a friend of it. My fathers had changed it from the grandfather onwards. There had been, and this was legendary, but I'm now coming to the point, looking at the whole new possibilities. In the internet, you can now conclude, and I come to circumstantial evidence that now is letting me, I'm now daring to say those things. Before it was interestingly enough, and of course you understand I'm not English raised, not in the English language, but I could talk it that good that people were not thinking too much I was a foreigner. Because in the United States, not everyone living there is talking good quality English. But I was only I was pleased mostly because I was raised with no high expectations. My mother was not that pleased. My mother, the elder, she was expecting things, and everyone was looking at a time, and there was nearly desperation why this was not, you see, repaired. This was with accidents or with death bones. This is everything with death bones. This is not good. Please do not look at the Third Reich from the ethical point, from the technology standpoint, or from the science standpoint. This could be diversified, but the ethical and not the individual. This is politics. I had the individual and I was shocked why yes, it is too complex to understand everything. There was talk, the only believing Jew that was a little bit more with me was Mr. Scherer, and he was as a child with his parents moving away from Silesia. I heard that, but not at the start and not as 100% sure. The Scherer was my piano teacher. I was not, let me say, from the parents' perspective, as a child, without any excuse, I was a child that was a little bit weak. Of course, not too much. When I was with others who were more expecting sober thinking, this was rather not weakness, but why was it considered weakness? Was it still that the physical is on the forefront? But this is not automatically, this is NSDAP, but not only, these are the science ideologists. And for me, this is something to learn from. This was then not, this was from before came their arguments. And in Breslau, they had a trying to make it better. And this trying is that important for my mother as well, because there was much talk. And those there were of course not representatives for the Germanic people, but to understand there was a different judgment necessary. Now I look for some colors, not only black and white, because this is important, but you can't do that if you are arguing on a political level. There is a line, politics, but you still have this ghost. What is that? This is something that can be solved with the belief. Religion. And this is stuttering. Sometimes it is there. It is not of that hindrance that people, but it is disturbing. You understand? It is disturbing, and this ghost is something that could be explained as it is self-loving, or it is self-loving. Yes, this is mostly. The law is combined, love God and love your neighbor, but this is not love, this is philanthropical love. This is to be understood. Therefore, my parents have been philanthropical. And my mother, she was raised to take care of this part of the world. Mother the elder. Papa was not communicating that, and if Papa had some relationship with the Rothschild family, with the Rothschild family, I could explain it in English or in German better than in English. And as said at the beginning, there is something strange in the technical surrounding. I'm not having trust in the technical detectives. I had been in the USA, or was it Australia? This was that fast. It was no holiday. It was a little bit holiday as well. People are looking for the fault. Self-seeking it is, and looking at the fault of others. This is a ghost, looking at fault. Of course, the bankers aren't those. Of course not. Bankers can be someone. It is possible if you have something, but those communists, if those are no wealthy, they want to have. But if communists are wealthy, do they give? And this is a thing normally people are not interested in, to talk this religion or ethical style. But this was every day, was it? And this is overlay. Oh, it's now not working anymore. Let me see if I can have it better when I go off the internet. No. And this is a thing that is strange. Is there someone targeting me? Question. Targeting me? Only because I was invitated. I was a visitor even as a child, being in a cradle. I was there. It was in a room. My mother took me with her she helped politics. Of course, you are carried alongside with mother. Mama, oh, this is going wrong. Oh, mother, mama, and I cannot let myself be stopped because of faults, these little ones. This is not for the theater, not for television. This is not cut, because I need you to understand, if I take too much filtering, but it is there, filtering is automatically there. This is a little bit filtering. I do not want you to be shocked. This is not the point. Filtering is there. This was physical. I was taken alongside, and this were two, and then there was a third lady. And one time, I explained it in another video, I was taken alongside with leaders. For me, from my standpoint, or of that of my parents, it was not of interest if those were noble, kings, or presidents. It is the thinking that if you stand before God, you cannot cringe before other people. But it is not a thing I can claim for myself. It is something like a role model. To have like a wish. If you have a digital, then it is filtering, because the analog is put into the form of digital. And if you have compression, then it is filtered out, which is unnecessary to have it in a smaller scale, on a smaller scale. If it is then transmitted, it is not necessarily filtered, but it is on the sideline filtered as well. My vocabulary is not good enough to have Shakespeare-style conversation. And this is because this high expectation is because I was raised in the Ur-German. Now, Ur is the old German quality thinking. And why is that German? That has the explanation in history. Why is it for you interesting? I think so, that you look at my strange explanations. This is for historical detectives. You understand? History. This history is not a thing that politics can make a cut, because it was passed on. The history of stock market, for example, or market with a T, stock market, banking, and the history of international contracts. I was there and a little bit explained the whereabouts, how it is handled in politics. And for me this is important, even if I do not go into politics. Leadership is today administration, and there are Democrats. Democrats take their people, take their self-understanding from that what people want, if they would know the best. This is politics, Democrats. if administration from the upside would do it the right way, they would think as well what people want, because God wants it to be the kind that even the little sheep, one of the sheep, is not lost. And this is a thing that was totally allowed and even wanted to argue it the Western style. Then there came DDR, and for me GRD, Western, no, Eastern of course, Western, Western of the Russian people. And the Russian people are not only Russians, but this is ethnically diversified. For me, this is a thing. I have to go to the outside world. I need help, because I think those are too strong. The thinking is still there, and it is of course not my style. It is not my style. I had been there as a helper between 19, I can remember, 170. There's Poland. I'm not thinking this is for me no problem, the political borders. The people are still there, and if those in my regard, good people, those are passing on the inheritance of their forefathers. Much death is there everywhere. BRG, you can abbreviate it. There was political talk, I think, from that on. And then came strange thinking. My father is that known, that much known. This is not possible. But it is. It is. The little drummer. Was he communist? My mother said he was no communist. He was someone who wanted to be righteous. If the communists are righteous, on that level, I'm like them. If the capitalists are righteous, what is the difference? One is forcing it and the others are doing it voluntarily. Therefore, I'm rather voluntarily. With communists, if you talk with them, you talk like a Greek. And I'm taking a little bit the New Testament verbal approach, but I'm not a so-called Christian. I want to be a biblical one. I want to be a biblical believer, but those were called Christians in the Acts of the Apostles, it is said. Therefore, it is a thing where I rather, being open, talk about ethics. Ethics, the Western style, and I understood ethics, the Eastern style, could be compatible. Because the Easterns, Russia is there, of course. China is not having that in the, and there is then, of course, other religions, and there you can have the common base because of humanity. You understand? There have been arguments. If you have it, you have as a fixing point humans being understood by psychiatrists. Psychiatrists, those can work it out, and according to what I have understood, those should come to the same, because reality, to the same result. If humans have it from the soul healer, the soul healer and the regulator. Licht und Wahrheit. Light, no. Yes, light is necessary to see, and then the righteousness, this is a scale, should not be on one side. And forgiveness is then a thing you have, but not wanting to have for all the time. Therefore, this is a problem by those who think from this should be science. This is an energy system, the energy system, where it is proved in everyday life. This is the source of life. Ich hoffe, das stimmt. Life. Or is it life? No, he's alive. This is right. This is private. The psychiatrist should make it that scientific, that the best result is the human is what counts. This is human rights that were, because of the belief of the people with Magna Carta and so on, put into writing as a basis. Now I'm feeling, of course, a thing that could point, not of course, but it is every day. This is sarcasm, of course, it is there again. And sarcasm is not, I'm not a role model. If I had any children, I would, of course, have some problems. And I wanted to have children, I still do. If children see you, they copy your behavior. And if you have sarcasm, this is a thing among the military. Human, the best for humans. You can come to the result from this or that standpoint, but at the end it should be tested, not by psychiatrists as well, but by economics. Economics, and this is not my best day. Economics, yes, the environment is very important. You cannot disturb what is entrusted to you, the earth. There you have different, there's Europe, Africa, I see it from the atlas. We have in this part of the world, there's, this is of course not good, this USA, this Europe, and so on. It is for understanding that you understand there are different climate zones, and if you have the human, you have responsibility if you are a leader. Therefore I was raised as a leader, and here it was that the DDR, the GRD, the eastern parts, some say middle Germany, this is not the point now, those go back then to the time of the Völkerbund, of the United Nations, when it started, and there were regulations and basis of it. I could go into that if it is necessary, but I think it isn't. But understand, please, this came to the ears of others, and I cannot say where they are. This is Russia, China, and of course India and the others. Do not forget Africa. But if any of them or one of them thinks like the DDR, those thought to survive, those thought about survival, those had pressures from the East, and then from the world economic system. And then there's US mainly, but there's GB, and this is old connections. GB is Great Britain, of course, and those had inside problems as well. And then everything is put on another scale, not of this in the scale of righteousness. And this, in German, Gleichgewicht der Powers. This, of course, is something I normally do not have to think about. But there is the false trying to blow up things out of proportion. And then to raise alarms, if no raising of alarm is necessary. Those are not only, there's Ukraine at the Think laboratory, and then there was, this is all known, there was St. Petersburg, and then there was Hungary, I already know. And then Austria, and this was not all the days to the best liking of the US. There was asking even if this could be revived, and this is not necessary when it is suppressed. You have to start as an individual, but if those are manipulated and suppressing, it is a thing that cannot even be solved not looking with the detectives thinking. That people are playing the tricks, not double crossing, but network crossing. It could be that my English explanation, please bear in mind that, please consider that it is not necessarily the best wording I give you right now. But the double crossing does not mean the legal crossing. It could also be like the playing in a football game. There you have two parties. This is soccer. And then there is a leader or many leaders. And then there are tricks, of course. But if you have it, there's a referee. In the other fields, people could even think ahead and then hinder the future leaders, and I feel myself as someone being hindered, who is responsible on his private behalf. And then there could even be some tricking into the, if I see myself, into the soul business. This is, of course, thinking. There is soul, then this is body, then this is finances. And then the environment is there, and people are tricking. And what is lacking, and this I need legally, this is the different kinds of money. And there should be some. If not, everything is burned the next days, and this is hopefully not the idea. If I know that there had been hindrance legal, but not proven, you cannot prove if the doctor is under pressure. If you go that way, there is no doctor who is wanting to help you anymore. Of course the doctor is pressured because of the unknown. The thinking can be with EMI or radio. This is not new, the Havana syndrome. And the soul should be holy, but the soul could be tricked by false preachers or false lovers. I was warned that it could be played against me, and therefore I was that cautious that I'm still single. And there had been then the wanting to be engaged with me. This young lady I knew quite well. She was in the holiday surrounding, not like a sister. I never had a very, very close sister. I had something like a sister. Maybe you know that yourself. I was, because I knew quite about life, I was myself a counselor to solve problems inside of families. And I found out the biggest problem, and this is nothing new, but the biggest problem are the people themselves. To coming to the truth, or to come to the truth, coming to the truth, and not being manipulated, this is the biggest problem. And then having the trust. And then there was a therapist, and I was asked if the other could talk to him, and then he found out the therapist was surveilled. I think it was police surveilling with something like a hidden microphone. And then the man who asked me, he was irritated. And you understand? This irritation, but mostly finances. Why are finances not there? From the United States, it was said, if you are here in the next time as a leader, maybe it is your responsibility. Maybe it is your responsibility. Then, what could be your part in it? And I'm not feeling well thinking about a referee. A goalkeeper? Who is the administrator? That part I would wanted the most. This is the chief of the club. And then it was only talk, like you do in the cafeteria, those former good friends, but maybe I can't say so. You cannot have a friend and then 30 years don't have him. It is possible, and then you are talking about the old stuff, and this is the problem. In my detective thinking, I understood those were not allowed. I was not snooping around too much. And I think it wasn't illegal, because being a minor, it was, there are borders. A minor, then you have, I think, 7 years, then you have 14 years, then you have 21. They put it to 18, but it is only to vote. You are adult with 21, and I was very cautious, because I was trained that way. There could be something, and there is something, because of the forefathers. I never thought about Karl. Not too much. Karl was like someone, like a fairy tale figure. But my mother said, they should give it to you, but if not, you can't do anything about it. You cannot wage war. You're thinking now, not with ethics. Mathematically, waging war could be going to court. No, you can't. The basis is not there. Custer, General Armstrong Custer. Would you ever think he was a blood brother with Indians? Maybe that. But you would never go to the point. He was working with security families, that he was having for the outside security. There a woman guarding the home, and she was for her own protection. called his wife. Would you think about that? And that in the other century before. And those stories were that legendary that people would think I should know. But how can I know? I'm now coming to the point. The new technology, I even worked a little bit on it and said I could come to it by circumstantial evidence. I was a child, but this is important. As a child, I had invitators. No, I had hostesses who invited me. And sometimes I did not knew beforehand, and later I thought, okay, no, he's a leader, but it is good to have leaders who are thinking on the family level as well. But new technology is the searching, and even reverse searching, and even having in the back of your mind different backgrounds. They are not different truth, so-called you have the technology. New technology is not only the internet. This is internet. This is the internet. You have it for historical detectives. And then it is a problem. How can Karl, if he is Karl, be that influential? It is possible. And then have no... Oh, yes, he is having... Was he that? He is having a name. But he is having another name. Was that honest? Question of honesty. This is a problem. Exceptions. Are there exceptions for leaders? Quite sorry this is, but this is to prove that it is me. My handwriting. Even I broke my thumb. It is still my handwriting to show that it is me. He was having problems. Others were having problems. I heard it from historical storytellings, or inside of them, that they had to have security. The security was sometimes, with his allowance, playing the leaders, or one of them. It is in politics. Diplomats. I was a helper to learn the surrounding of diplomacy, and there I was in the invitating staff as a helper, and being a detective-minded, I asked if the original would come, and some said maybe. This answer gave it away. It is possible. You can't do more than that, but you're learning it is even now in place. Therefore, this is then contracted. And I was looking as a boy, even I didn't know. And I'm now coming to my own persuasion that it is Karl. And I'm looking rather for arguments, not to say yes or no, for arguments that it could not have been Karl. This is what a detective does. He's looking for arguments against that what he is thinking now about, to exclude errors. And I'm still not at 100%. And sometimes it is only 98, but I cannot give an exact figure. You understand? It is nearly not to be contradicted anymore by my collection of arguments. And that is photographs and so on as well. I was asked if I wanted to have such a co-worker party, and my mother said, you will be the original. And I asked, how come others are not? Me? Was that important? But how could mothers and fathers, Papa? Who is the Danish prince? Who is that? He died. He's not dead, he said, but this could mean he is not there, or he is not being counted. I don't know. Papa? A believer? But can this be a reason? And a preacher? But this was inside of the law. Even his preaching was not with good grammar, with good, so to speak, Goethe's grammar. Papa wanted to convert people. Papa. And he was doing things others said you can't do. They will attack your family. Papa was against grooming, mafias. They are not allowed to tweak German. Papa was a protector for Germany in his thinking. Grooming, mafia, and he was not knowing if that is true. It was question. He did not even know the word. And then he went to police and complained on behalf of young colleagues. He was always saying the young colleagues are laughing at him. For example, being 15 years old and starting, then when being 18 years and understanding it was no love, it was only enjoyment the others wanted, they went to Papa, and Papa then went to police, and that was for some too much. You understand? And he stopped. Others said they will break into your family. But did those mean breaking into the family physically through the back door? Papa. Original me, is that much? But because Papa acknowledged me as, but even if it was not legal, sorry. Even if it was not legal. I'm officially a stutterer medically, but it does not mean I cannot express myself in a good manner, but it is more straining, you understand? Therefore, this is important. I'm not doing it lightly, and I'm not being hindered, and I do not even want to talk about that, about illness. I do not want to talk about illness. I have to do it because people were in my school time saying I could not, because of my stuttering, be any official. And this was something not accepted by me. I said, of course, to the people, young people, yeah, then I'm doing something else. This is not officially. Yeah. And it is important that you do not argue with everyone. And Papa, Mama, and Oldma. I always thought Mama was among students, and some said Mama could be a princess. But if Mama is what she was then contradicted officially with DNA, I now understand that was a trick. The man she was resembled with, he was from Russian descent. This is not good or bad, this is only a case. It is not for me to judge if that is good. Some think Russians are not good. I now understand Russians. You cannot say, if you learn about them, if you get them to know, and you do not know those are Russians, you do not see those are Russians, according to what people say. Of course, if someone is there and then arguing politically, you then understand if that is the so-called Russian standpoint or not. This was for me stunning as a boy. I went across, this is on the sideline. I was carried along, sleeping on the ground and everything else. This was not for my enjoyment. It was to have ethical understanding in the world. I was in Japan, and I was with future leaders, and those would fight if this question had been there, if this question would arise for them. And I said I was trained not to do it the physical way. I was trained that what is counting nowadays, that is the legal basis. And I'm of course accepting there is the protection necessary as well, and that had been, I can't say enough or not enough, but where's the protection against technical negative influence? And this can be done through the currency network, through the satellite network, through the watering network, through the distribution with packets, postal network. This can be done with the religious network, with the anti-religious network. And this was not my wanting. I was invited when police had cultural cases. And then there was a table with many people, and I was invited as a boy, and it was honorable. Therefore, I have no, it was only as a counselor, I have no written proof. I was in one time in Australia, there was a culture law, a law of culture from immigrants. And these Australians in this town were not willing to make an exception. Therefore, in my counseling, I had to change it a little bit. I was thinking about wanting to have there an exception, like it is the inner law inside of the house, and making it like something house law or the voluntary law of culture. And this is the thing, when you're counseling, it is not your responsibility. You take it into your calculation. And I think, with my help, not I did it, with my help, this is belief. Papa, Mama, Altma, with God's help. And this was accepted by the others. I'm not preaching more than that. But with the DDR, those had allergy reactions saying that. Nothing more. I only felt there is something coming anti against me. And I want to have this right. I had even acceptance in the Arabic, and this was in India as well. Therefore, I mean Arabic. I mean the tribes law that is based on the Honorable Mr. Mohammed or the Prophet Mohammed. I have no problem to call him, from my standpoint, honorable. I'm not judging him. I'm not judging Mr. Buddha, the Honorable Mr. Buddha. I'm not, hopefully I've not forgotten one, because those wanted to be good prophets. From my standpoint, I know my living God. But I'm not on the stage of politics go farther. There is acceptance that others have the right to have their own profits. But when I'm preaching, of course, then I remember what was counsel to Mr. Billy Graham. He once came at the doorstep. He said he wanted to see who is still standing behind him. He was bringing those back to their bases. But be careful, do not take it into politics. There is war in the name of the cross. This is not my cross. There is war in the name of a prophet. This then is not, but I'm not judging it, what I called honorable. But I'm not judging it. There could be war in the name of the cross, but not by those people. This is then my own critique against the people who call themselves among the cross. This should be the task of the honorable head of the Catholic Church, the honorable head of the Eastern, is it Catholic? The Eastern Church, and the honorable state leaders who are heads of churches, the Danish Church, is it British or English? The church. I had a little talk. No, he had with me. I was a child, and I asked if he is a believer. This Mr. Canterbury, I don't know if it was him, but it was in his office. And he said it is a good question that from time to time even a child is asking that. Papa was suspicious. He said, my old ma, she was suspicious, but she was saying maybe those were under pressure, the Third Reich. Mama was too young. But Mama said, and she was having problems, that with her parents, she counted my father, Fritz Johann, as Vati. And this is therefore Papa is Papa. There's not father, but he is the only one I ever had. He protected me. He said they pressure me. And I was sitting in a forest. And he said, now, and I said, I will not disturb anybody. It was the Cold War, and it was in the forest. The car was parked. I think it was there. It was a little bit apart, maybe 200 meters. And then I said, I don't know what this is all about, but I had no other. But if my father would have come back from the war, of course therefore he had the right to raise me. No. Later I learned Oldmar had given it to Papa. From the legal standpoint, there was a contract with Papa to raise me, what was inside of it. Therefore, if Papa passed it on to, no, it was from Oldmar, passed on to the traveling fathers. And in America, it is not too much that people think about the law. I was in a countryside. There was much with drug business. The police were collecting those using drugs. And my thinking as a boy, maybe I was 14, 15, 16 years old, that was, I'd like to change it with Papa's method. But I like to change it with Mama's method. She was a teacher, pedagogical, Grundschullehrerin, and she said, Grundschule is for the minors. She wants those at the early start to influence them, grade 1 to 4 or to 10. In biology, my mother, and she then said, sadly, she had to stop the science. In biology, she educated, and my mama was strict. And I was glad to have my mama. I was proud to have my old ma. Mama was, I don't know if she would be still proud. Old ma, she was proud in between. Not too much. She then said she would have liked me to fight. But I said, therefore he is a hero. But my mama did not want to hear too much. She was then that sad. It is heartbreaking to have those casualties of war. And this goes to all sides. I wanted to take care of the graveyards, not take care, to make them for remembrance and for the warning that war will destroy families. He was not a friend of the Canon politics, in German Kanonpolitik. My father, he was not a follower of that. And after World War II, there was the legendary telling. I asked, and people said, yes, his men were in the Near East. This was the conflict, and still is, maybe, about Jerusalem. And then his men were counseling. I think 3 of them at least, counselors. Therefore, there's hopefully much going on in counseling. Or it had been. And those counselors, I don't know how much I knew, at least one. But he could have come to the group, this musician. He was too young, Mr. Karajan, he was too young, but he had me as a visitor. And I myself was not pleased with my standing. I was not pleased. You cannot be pleased with what you have achieved if it is always not working out. The expectations had been sports and schools. Sports was middle, as in German always said. School was middle, not good enough. And then there was friends. I had my friends. And there I had lost some. I was in a school that was a German-speaking school. It could be, and why I don't know. I had no writing down of my everyday whereabouts. Also in German, ich habe kein Tagebuch geschrieben. This is German. I was not diary. Is it a diary? I was not writing a diary. Friends. I had schoolmates. I had out of church. Not even mates, but schoolmates. A little bit. For schoolwork, for example. And this was because my mother said, better have no friends, then come into the wrong crowd. Therefore, it was a good thing that from 1994 on, I was in a social business, but it was being with dementia. Being with dementia. But some of them, of course, the co-workers were not having that, I hope. And it is not a joke. Sometimes I think this is not respected at all. I was glad there came Polish, Romanian and Russian and Turkish, but it is, of course, those were working there because those had problems in school for other reasons. I was in the US in a school, and those said you could do everything. I was voluntarily going to school when it was holiday, school break in the Federal Republic of Germany. I was in the US, and I was even allowed. I felt it because of my sensible perception as an honor to be among other children who were being assessed. And those said, you are a little bit burdened with sorrow. Of course I am. Of course, if you have sorrow from the parents, if you have everyday sorrow, Papa had sorrow. He was having my mother. Those were co-workers as well. And I had someone who was not accepted as a replacement of my father, who was forced to play. He was not accepted. He wanted to have something from my mother. And I said, this is not in my liking, that I do not know what to pass on. Passing on. Rights. And this is not to be stressed too much. Rights. These are contract rights, basic rights, of course something you can use. Karl gave it to Fritz, but he was Fritz Johann, because there was another who was allowed to be Fritz. But this was not 100% sure if there was trickery. That is, he was having a co-worker party, co-workers like family. I don't know what. This must be an old custom, but it was on contract. And this Mr. Jack Benny said that I am the son. But I was warned, if you don't know what it is all about, then because it can be tweaked. There could be the people, the co-workers, having been forced to tweak the contracts. Therefore my mother had it, and she said, you look into it, and you can override what was on coactus. And this was sometimes not private. My father secured it, when I have understood it right, to give it, and my mother gave it to me. And this is not to be contradicted, it is not possible, because foreign countries guarantee it. I'm not accepting this not friendly environment, this hostile environment. I'm not accepting it as being trustworthy. And this I said from the start. I went to Switzerland and I said, this is dangerous. Maybe Mr. Kohl, he had farewell, and I was there very short, maybe it was. And even if I did not give it in written form, I said, I am not pleased. People have foul play. What he wanted to know, I don't know. And that, what my father had secured by giving it to my mother, this is in the guarantee of the honest Eastern people. I'm not following the idea that the Eastern, the Russians, Chinese, are on the private security level less trustworthy. I'm not doing that. I had conflicts with the U.S., but I'm not saying in the United States people are less trustworthy than in the Russian or Chinese part of the world. And I'm now saying, this is Africa, of course a bit here, Africa. Trustworthy people I met. I had not a long conversation. Mandela and the chairman parliament. I could not decide on what side I would be. He had arguments, he had arguments. I was a very young adult, but I did not understand what the one was interpreting my saying and what the other. Therefore, this is interesting very much, but dangerous understood. This went back to the Netherlands. There are the Boeren, trustworthy very much. This is in accord with the saying of the others, but it is always weighing out as trustworthy. Trustworthy. This time I did it in English, that you understand how much I can express myself. It is not the best, but I had conversations with others who were pleased with it. Even it was even before I was learning with this method that is from this is from people residing in France. And this was said in a legendary form. This was the method where the world's travel man, or the Carlsman, I now call them that, it is not official. Those are not legally all bound to him. It is sometimes cultural friendship. And if you have enough, you're not all the day talking about money. This was, in my regard, not about money. It was about, of course, it is a money business. But that what I see Now, as my mother, she was like chief of a club. She was also having shares, and this I don't know what. But she was no chief anymore when I was a child. This must have been formerly. And then it was on hold. Oh, Mensch, schlimmer. Hold, this was German. It is not good with my handwriting today. But I need something like tiredness to dare myself into such an interpretation. But it is according to what I perceive as truth. According to what I understand as truth and truthfulness. She must have been kind of chief of but not a club that was only in shares all herself. And this goes then to that I still don't understand. This goes somehow to the old leaders family. But this is not legal. This must have been something like a congregation of businessmen who were talking about things. Not legal, I don't think so. This is this is west, and on the east, Karl, I think he was more alone. Karl was head of like it. Therefore, this is now not understood. How can it be that there is no money? Not at all. I understand it. Now, understanding there are shares. There's land. There are rights, patents, inventions. Shares, land, rights. And this is hindered, not that those want it, I cannot say. This then would be an accusation personally. And this could be it is like manipulation of the weather, manipulation of water, manipulation of air. This is not the devil's work, you can't say so. This is taking advantage. Most likely. And this taking advantage could go to a point where you don't understand it. Most likely. Because I was a helper in the children's homes. And there I met the waiters in German Kinderheim. The GRD was having Kinderheim, children's homes, kindergartens, yeah, boarding schools like it, for those having no parents, being orphans. 80,000, it was said, from the Ukraine, and those were not taken over as responsibility. I can remember that I myself as a child said no. Even if it had been a plan of the Nazis, this is being copied. You're not allowed to copy evil plans, but the children are there. And then I said, this is from the peoples, not from someone taking over responsibility. If it was done, it was not by my judgment. And my mother and me, we were both. Mother and me. I was not that large. But we both were talking about things like building a Volkswagen company in Israel to give them work, to help. And I said, and my mother said in the 70s, it is not that we pay for something, it is our helping. I understood from that point on, even at that young age, being 2 years old, that it is a difference. If you help, because you are forced to help, because you have done something of damage, you are forced to build up something. But we did it, and this was looked into it, and people were looking, and this was embarrassing. People were always looking to find something, a speck of sawdust, maybe they found, but to find. And I said, if there are shares, then this is not, then this is then I'm in the need of counselings. And this is Carl. And this is not there. I need counselings what to do with it. And this then was even better or not. There had been then, this is Carl. This is Elsie. And if my mother had friends, was having friends, as I calculated, or I need it still there, Carl was east, more east, but he wasn't. Carl was there as well. Therefore it is the world. You cannot tell it apart. And why that? There is an Eastern law and a Western law. This is the paragraph sign. And people think about money. This is not about money. Money is that what makes us round, going round. Money is like the fuel. This is unknown. This is unknown. Looking. I asked in between all the time. And then it was said, stop. I asked. And then, why is no one? Then we have now, this is December 21st, 22nd, 21st Saturday. Saturday, and this is a bad handwriting, but the point is, do I have rightful suspicion that something's going wrong, or is it coincidence? Coincidence is possible. And for me, it is not that important if it is coincidence or by voluntary decisions. It is something that is too much of coincidence to be coincidence only. This is another trick to be taken into consideration by a detective. If there is coincidence, the wind of nature, so to speak, then it is possible to go there with a fire and to bring something in turmoil. If you have this as a nature, this is the earth, and then you have something, and if you have a big fire, then it is warm, and the circle is going differently. The circle is going differently. You can manipulate the weather, not very likely on a big scale. You can influence coincidence. If I have a weak spot, like allergies, people want to hinder me, a little dust is doing the work. But this is detective thinking. Like Mrs. Marple, Sherlock Holmes. And my mother was a friend of the main character of Miss Marple. And Sherlock Holmes, who is Uncle Ben? And who is he? I came not to the idea because it was not of interest as a child. No, it was not said. It was for security reasons, but it must have been. But I was kept out of the official. And somehow you learn to accept things. This does not mean that legally I accepted them. If you have the weather, you cannot go there and ask for the manipulation parties to stop. You can do that, but will people listen? Therefore, seeing the world and understanding the arguments we lost the war is not valid. From what standpoint? I heard it that much. That I questioned it even more. We lost what war? What war? Of course, the shifting legal verdicts, but legal contracts? What is coactus fecit? My mother said she was alone and she was invited, and state representatives showed her a paper and said, we did it for you, you need to sign only. And this is no joke. This must have been till 1985. Around. Coactus fecit does mean forceful, therefore not valid. But what can you do? You can do nothing because we lost the war. This is no argument, because traveling through the United States, what war? Have I different rights because being... Yeah, that could be the problem. Who stole me my birthright? Who did so? I didn't. I'm not allowing a president to intermingle in my law business. I'm not allowing someone being a governor to intermingle. Do you do that in America now? Nowadays? Is the president like a king? I like the United States, but have they one voice? There had been a visit to Visit America, and I said, you can do it, but only what I wrote down. I can only do it in German. There was legal given something, and I wrote it down in case I will not survive. But this was for the time being. That gave him permission to do something he would never do, and only the permission was written down. I had to do it to show that I'm no bounty of war. I'm no bounty of war. But I felt threatened. And this is, of course, not valid from the start. I gave him allowance that contradicted. And this is allowed if I want someone to be my representative. The contradiction, if I have it in remembrance, the contradiction arose because I was threatened. You have no forces anymore. The power is in our hands. Was these the Russians? This is not a believers club, it is a radio station, It should be a believers club. And it was there someone I wanted to trust. But this was years ago, maybe 13 or 20. It was a time when it was said, we lost the war, I need someone. But this is by itself not valid anymore. I was looking for something and people said, we do not want it. Forceful, not valid. And if I put that before, this is coactus fecit, or that. Even if it is similar, this is a strong accusation to the one who is the other contract party. But you can't do it if you are there and the people say, yeah, we had won the war. But I felt myself being thrown out of the own country. There is still trust in the entities of the United States. There is still trust. There is still trust. Da ist immer noch. But how much? This is not a believers club, and I think it hadn't been. There are believers among it. You cannot have a club that is fully out of believers. This is not a good... the color is not a sign, okay? This is a radio station, And mainly it should have the ethical basis from the Bible somehow put into practice. I'm now, of course, much more sober. As a child, you have dreams. You're not that sober. You're of course not drunk, but you have some dreams. And here I gave something into writing. I don't know, fully understand what, because I've forgotten what it could mean, but I gave it what was my wishful thinking. Can I trust those who sent others on the mission field, but I felt some were no believers at all? This is an accusation against the evangelical churches. No, I can't. Against individuals. Preaching, sending on the mission field, and not defending truthfulness. This is also contract truthfulness. I always, and I still have not only the idea that if someone has the Bible in its hands, in her hands or his hands, then this is something that is giving you the objective standpoint, not being sided. This does not mean that is not on the east or not on the west. That is me feeling like someone who is not on the German side and feeling with the Americans who wanted to be something new, leaving the ghost behind. But that does not give the money away. It could mean that you do it voluntarily. This is now my standpoint. I do not know exactly what I had written down. I had to do it fast. I had to do it fast because before I was tricked. And I had to do it into writing. I hope it worked out. If you are with a Bible in your hand, you are not on the US side and not on the Russian side. Without the Bible, you, of course, like an officer of the United States, you are defending the interests, but if you have the Bible in your hand, I think that makes you, I think it very much. Otherwise you are sunk. With the Bible in the hand, I was looking objective, not being sided. This is not good writing, but you could ask if you like, and I feel pressured only because of my asking. This is actually present. December, this is like a military does it. There's no use to be in an agitated mode. But it is rather being sober. There is the chance to win. But only if it is possible that people understand that there is the ambition to make it more solid, not more unstable. I heard people say they do not want this and that because there is the chance to make it unstable, and then I feel like being victimized, like being thrown out, as being not valid, to be counted. This is right now. This is not in, I could say it in German. It is something like Bauernopfer. And this is not in my judgment, it is my understanding, not to judge myself being of importance or not. But I think that could be the result. And I do not want to make others not as well important. Therefore I was raised with a Bible in the hand. And now understanding that many Christians are there, I'm looking for a new word, for new wording. God believer, I had it before, God believer, or God believer, follower, and this is much too complicated. Because it is not necessary. How can you follow him? He is much too large that you go in his footsteps. Of course, he has a son. You know this visitation. You know that. And it is not for me to send someone on the mission field. The mission field is there, where you are and where I am, but I had been on the world, therefore it is the world. And my assets are away. I tried to say it, and I even began to calculate and to argue, but then I said it is all invalid. Because people are not putting it into practice what they promised. I was arguing on the business level, but it was all invalid. People are saying this and that, and you can't have it, therefore please sign something. It is all not valid anymore, because what they said is not true. If there is the basis, not truthfulness, it is not valid. And my guarantees should be worldwide, not only, but the US were the most interesting parties in the US. God believers, God followers, based. Das ist natürlich besser, aber man muss das nicht haben. Or else. Denn es geht ja dann hier Human Rights. Or civil rights. This is financial danger. Schufa-Eintrag ist noch am harmlosesten. Schufa, that is a company privately because of irregularities. Irregular. This is of course not that I pass a buck. I have for quite a time no plan what to do else. I feel like being in a resistance against the moving away of that little, what is evidence left overs. The evidence leftovers are pushed away. I see the changing of company names. I see the moving, when the papers are telling it right, but I see it. It is moving away, even with false contracts maybe between leaders of the world. And this can be stopped, but only if there are guarantees or stoppers. And I have not the idea that then everything is actually coming back. but I have the idea that the basis is corrected. And then I have to be cautious. Actual. This is the sign for lightning. Actual. Financial danger. Good, great for the enemy, not for me. Good and great for the enemy. That banking problems are that large. It is not that I'm begging, I'm crying out to help my legal point to be financially surviving. It is a trick in politics played against other politics, but I'm no politician. And I don't know how to do it otherwise. I have for a long time no possibilities to travel, what my allergies, what my eating diabetes problems are concerned. I cannot travel cheaply. I need something, and the family is working like being against me. Maybe those are manipulated. Therefore, I went to believers, and I said, why don't you understand? And now I understand it is difficult. Those are all obligated, contracted. And where's a country that allows the conscience to say stop? What country does it allow? I know in the Federal Republic the Grundgesetz, Gewissensgründe, conscience are allowed. Is it in the US? Conscience? What is this in Great Britain? I think the biggest problem is, what is with Russia? There I don't know the law. What is with Japan, China, France? I don't know, but I know quite sure that according to the law, and this is not the SS, I don't like it. It is a paragraph and paragraph. This maybe is basic law and this is contract law. Both I have the strong feeling, and this is now growing more solid every day, that this is on my side, that there are big, large assets. Large assets. And I said it before, if that is Carl, people should ask me if there's mining business, putting it out of the ground. If there is something like water management in deserts. If Carl is a Carl, and this is very, very, very important, if he is not the Carl people are talking about, Carol is also, or Charles, is also a writing. If he is a Carl, then he could have been the stockbroker who had a third of the stock market. At one point of time, in the 70s, 1900, no, 1750, no, 1870, and this is the next. At what time? At what time was Carol? But I'm no understanding, people must have known. And the biggest, the largest, the more solid, you cannot have it. This federal state is behaving strange. like doing it with someone raising havoc or turmoil. I'm not doing that. I want the basis. Here in the Federal Republic we have Gewissensfreiheit. Do you have it in the US? If your conscience says no, I cannot follow the idea that that this diet is only abbreviated. Joe, J-O-H, is abbreviated for Johnny or Johannes, and Frederick is the real name. This is in the papers. Am I someone who is being dangerous? This is DDR thinking. They had put it, or they put it out of context. You are a danger digging out the truth? Or are people saying, I want to be a leader for the natural people? Karl was a leader for the Indians, so-called Indians. Seamen. Of course, the tribes, the Bushmen, those some dark-colored, but that is as it is. It is not the idea. The idea is those were nature, living people. Those still had rights to live. And then Karl was by himself wanting to do something with them as contract partners. Therefore, this is optional. Folks, this is not, but it could have been that people were being in fear that there would come a Führer, a leader, who would then have a danger or give a danger to the world. I heard it after Martin Luther King. But what was his ideas? What were his ideas? What was it? Why was there some talk? What was it? He had been in Berlin, 1930s, Berlin. I was 1970s in a black, not a black country, but with dark, no, it wasn't dark, it was skin, different. His son must have been more adult. I was only 5 years, therefore 1973. 5 years myself. Please understand, I cannot guarantee anything, but my life has a character. But life is dangerous if you have something that others do not want you to have. And there is a conflict in the US with the prisons. Prison, 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 prison. No dungeons anymore, officially not. Prison. Some look like hotels, but it is still a prison. No freedom. I was there invited to look at the quality. It was as a boy, and I was cautious, but I was near the point that someone in the north state of the United States, had contracted me. And it was a contract that was then running out. It was based on time. But I understood there are honest people who were not taking advantage. I need people not taking advantage. This does not mean automatically that people do it. You cannot prove that. But I have allergies. Do people take advantage? This is giving me a sick appearance. Apnoe and allergies are relative to the time and the environment. Apnoe is something because of my stature. I'm not a pre-born. You cannot be born when you are there. You are there. I came to light. And there were two in the room. It was a room. There were two beds. No, this was a bed there. There were doctor. There was a woman as well. I think I'm the child of. You cannot be born by both. But I was breastfed by my mother and by my mother. Oldma was old mother. Those are two. And mama is mama. Apnoe, and then I have minors. This is some breathing problem, not a problem, but you cannot be with the Olympics. No, this is not right. And this is from my retraining. I'm not having, it could well be that I met someone. Yes, I must have been with his co-workers. But those said, those are no father. No father. No. Nowadays, I mean, they had been fathers, they meant. Is it legal? Or is this like a church father, someone taking in the father's position? I think so. Yes. She had surgery, and then she could legally, according to the law and the rules, have a child. Is my mother the daughter of the Grand Duke or of the Greek princess? For me it is not what I looked at. I looked at Mama. And with my father, if he had come back from the war, I would have been like his son. But he was very strict. My mother said he was respected and feared. But not for you not. He was very sensitive as well. Therefore I looked at them from the human perspective. Now I need people not taking advantage and understanding, but not expecting. This is not to be guaranteed. I was raised to be cautious, but I guarantee with my character, if I'm allowed to do so. And if there is not manipulation, yeah, therefore it is control, but not by those. Not by those. This is not even in the thinking, not by psychiatrists, but by common sense people. And I was having it very much on the way, and you can, but only to some point, do it technically. If you are listening to my saying on the internet, You have only what is presented you. This could be, with another overlay, be changed. This is only that it is possible. I'm not saying that it is. And I want to show you something. This is then, if people are fearful of preaching, Canon the preacher, maybe I can do it. No, this is not there anymore. Battery went out, ran low, and done. Canon the preacher, that was a thing. I can remember, I thought, is this right? I had on the sideline parents who met me for a short time. And then one said, you need a father who is educating you. And I was beginning to have doubt if that was right, even if others said it to me, other adults. You understand, there is a time when you, as a little child, you have the idea the adults do it as it is the best, because you are raised, do what is right. Then I remember people were looking for a good preacher. And I was, as a little boy, trying it myself. Ah, there he is. And maybe others are doing it as a reenactment. But it is something strange. I can remember I went down the pulpit from the desk, from the preaching standpoint, in asking the traveling papa, have I do it as well? Say something. I was beginning to have my conscience controlling me. Is it right to preach and know that others do not understand, like you have to do this and that, and then you will have it as a result, and it is not working out that way? Wonderful time. And it is really true that people are playing people are playing the trick. Of course, if you look at it, it is something like funny. Therefore, this must have been someone else. I had already, you can look it up for yourself. I had already learned that it is about responsibility, and then it is about expectation of other adults who want you to do this thing, and then there is a control. This was allowed. This is a hierarchy. You have your conscience, and if you pass on or preach or say something, it is expectations. And want, different. But your conscience is controlled by This is important that I thought when I was doing this, I think it is reenactment, myself, even at the age of 4 years maybe. I understood not everything you can do, not everything that has no consequence is good. It is rather a thing where you have the control if you have the control not for others in the living God, for others it is parents, forefathers. As this little boy, I was arguing why people do things even with no consequence, even if no consequence is there. It is something there like a control. The conscience can of course be tested by others. The expectations are there, the want you have yourself, and this must start early on. There was a man or a woman, I don't know, who was saying something. I cannot explain if it was, but I heard what he said. I think he said you cannot pass on the responsibility, even at that age, to the others. But I think I could do so. It was legally not of age. This is very much important. This is what I now say, but it is for you, if you want to know if this is true. It is about evidence, okay? If the strange doctors who look for reactions and for illness and have no right to do so, I'm not accepting the government as being in the say what this international thing is about. Maybe I'm not at all, but I cannot say it right now. Needed for United Nations. No, I wouldn't accept it. I would give them the defense. There was an evil man, and more evil man, from the United banking and interest systems, who wanted to make me a guardian of the United Nations, and those could be by those who have a conscience be put in the open as evil. It is evil to give you help and do it for blockage. And I have these family enemies, those called Wagner, and the ex-Stasi people. Those tweaked their ways into my life, and those had been for a short time real friends. But this has to be proved. You cannot go there, and there had been even a contract for the case of an atomic destruction of the world. That was cancelled in the 90s. Of course, if he is a believer, the level of the control is still there. I would listen to arguments. But there is no contract. This is cancelled contracts, cancelled in 1900s. Because one went to a bank and asked for insight into some accounts. And there was nothing, but even this doing so gave some unknown man the reason to phone me. This and so on, this telephone number. This is not there anymore. It was for unknown reasons switched off. And this could be something like the weather, where there is one problem after the other. The weather is changing. This telephone number is not there anymore. Therefore, others cannot reach me with the telephone number. And there the friends are manipulated. The friends with the same name. The friends are manipulated. Like being in the weather and having too hot sun, a sunburn, and they're not thinking anymore sober. There's much illness going on with an aunt. If there's someone called Edita, don't listen to her. She never was someone who could replace my mother. This is very solid evidence. She once had the plan to do so. Do not listen to the horse-riding young lady. He was, I think, called Anna. Do not listen to her. And do not listen to someone in Berlin who was in the road party of my mother. This is not there anymore. Because legally, do not listen to them. Of course, listen to them if they have something else. But legally, cancelled. Because understood, people are not putting into practice what those had promised. And there was a leader in the United States who said he gave someone else some funds for me. And those did not pass it on. Therefore, who is tricked? The man who sent it. And there had been someone in Russia who had some ideas, and I did not understand if I should cancel that as well. But I cancelled it because he said he is not allowed to be a friend anymore. He is under higher law contracts. I did not understand it fully. But if someone is a friend and the friendship was like a brother friendship, and he is not allowed to be on that level, this is cancelled. You cannot allow someone who is having legally something that is then captured. Danger of legal captures. Therefore, most cancelled of those honor agreements. But not everything, even with his I did not know it, with his ex-Stasi man, there is a human level is still there. And this Wagner was not an enemy. He said he is doing business. But I said I'm taking it personally. Therefore I don't know. But it is cancelled that others do not think I'm following the idea without looking back and wanting to change something. And therefore, since those did not come back to change it, it is cancelled. And even with Russia, it could be the same, but there it was honor agreement. And the honor agreement is to be interpreted. And this is now a thing I cannot do. I cannot do in the open, and I cannot even do if done privately, because the problem is false grounds to my disadvantage. To my disadvantage. Because Karl is my grandfather, he was in the East, but was he also in America? If one point had a Karl and he was my grandfather, this does not mean that he then was necessarily on the other locations. You understand? You cannot cancel part of it and then thinking you are changing the others as well. Therefore, there is contract in writing, and I was accepted to be in the shoes of someone, and I said my address is there. And there is then the danger that people sneak into offices like Justizministerium, like leaders in Kanzlerämtern, and then changing things. It could well be that those sneak in and want to preserve it. Then this is no sneaking. Therefore, this sneaking in is something from my judgment. But you can sneak into a documentary department and change things. And this, said enough, had been in the area of the former GDR, eastern parts of the so-called Germany. It is possible that people sneak in and change the grounds. And how come I to this conclusion? I have for 4 years, no, it was even before, but at least 4 years, no valid reactions. And this gives me the idea that the saying, the remarks, in the pub, so to speak. I never was there, but so to speak. I had been there, but not regularly. It was a pub or a cafe. No, it is important not to go to places where you are in danger to be drunk. But people said some things as remarks, and then said it was only in private, but those remarks gave me the idea people would fight against anybody, everybody, that would be associated to nobility, or to the stockbroker business. And this is DDR, not Stasi, DDR thinking. Those think it is a solid ground and an excuse to do something I don't understand. I'd like to say it in another video in German as well. Could it be that those people think it is morally acceptable to change the grounds for someone who is an heir, and for years, for decades, do not give him, it is our right to hinder him, as an excuse, or even as someone. My father had been in friendships where there had been communistic ideas. You can be a friend, but then stay awake. This is then only someone who has ideas. If someone is fighting for it. The communistic idea is, for example, socialists. It is not necessarily DDR, GRD or Russia. It is all over the world. Someone who wants to distribute the wealth, he is having communistic ideas. Someone who wants to have forceful things like healthcare. This could be the beginning, not necessarily. It could be like another insurance company. But in the GDR there had been hardcore. Hardcore communists, and I cannot identify them. But could it be those had ideas? Yes, said enough. And I had been in the circle, and then I was following the ideas as a minor. I had strange companionships. Being between, for example, when was I traveling alone? Very early, and I was guarded by good people, otherwise I would not be alive anymore. This is no exaggeration. Schoolboy. I was in the schooling system of the GRD to look if it is that evil. There I was 12, 14, but it was dangerous. No one thought about it. The GDR's thinking is to change things. Sometimes I think 4 years. Missing reactions. And my asking went to government, but this should now be enough. I hope you have some idea to help me, and this is mostly a financial disaster because of the Schufa entries, and those are on grounds, but I cannot change it. I need a loan because I'm that bound by detective working on this. I feel my obligation. Otherwise, the last little evidence is gone. And the changing of law giving possibilities is giving me hints that it is politically. I do not want to blow it out of proportion, but people know that there is the idea to make it more and more state guardianship. And I think it is communistic ideas behind it. I do not like it at all, but this is about, even in communistic lawful thinking, this is illegal, because I'm hindered to have the evidence to even think about it. Therefore, I ask again. And this is for some people who think that the fist is an argument. Is it whining? No, it isn't. It is speaking like a lawman. But who had been a counselor and lawman to the Indians, to the Ute people that had been my father? Who had been someone, a lawman and a helper, but a military as well? This is Karl. He was behind Stresemann. And I'm not always talking that nicely, and I do want to stay it that way. It is not a method to have the arguments of the fists and the weapons. It is a proving duty to prove me that there had been no hindrance. Or are the doctors influenced, or not even wanting to listen to this recording, or to the possibilities that are always there, that the system of psychiatrists is maybe misused for political things? I heard it from the GDR, from the eastern parts of the Germanic states. And this is my mother's speaking. She was never accepting the cutting off and giving it to Poland, but Poland was having the need to have territory. And you cannot, by my judgment, revert that. Therefore, it is to honor my mother. She was thinking like a law woman. My mother was thinking like a law woman. War was not the method. It was a disaster. And this time I hope you can help me. My funds are not there anymore. Those are running out. In the past, had run out. I need someone who is trusting me enough to support me. Thank you very much. This is 2 hours and 55 minutes, 10 seconds. Maybe it is a little bit slower with you. And it is important. Be cautious. Even this address could be tricked. And no ecom, or how do ecom? This is a method where the telephone can be prolonged, and you can telephone in the garden without any equipment. This is in Japan technology, and this is not at all secure, not secure. And I said it when I was having not secure. When I was having an experiment in a laboratory, and this is possible. There is, as it was said to me, is something like an environment where it's magnetic, and there you have your head. Your head is then being magnified, not the head, but that what is there as bioelectric, and then somehow with an antenna passed on. But this is not secure. I'm not saying that I know someone who is tricking it, but maybe you do. I don't. I hope, of course, I could say something. And it was worked on security with me. Of course, you have to think like Advocatus Diabolus, to think from the other part. But to use it, this is for the movies. But please stand your ground and stand on the side of truth and truthfulness. Thank you very much. This is Friedrich, and this is important. This is important. It is not about me only. Of course, you can help me if you like to help an individual. But think about what my character, maybe you understand it could be that it is. But I'm suspicious, even to the point to accept suspicion against me. But please, do not come to wrong conclusions. Thank you very much. 2 hours, 56 and 44 seconds. Thank you. This is the 21st December 24.